All right, welcome everybody to Kiali's 1.64 Sprint 86 community meeting. We're going to talk about what we've done this sprint and what we're going to do next sprint. So we'll quickly, as usual, the agenda is we'll go over a quick summary of what we did, cover some of the highlights, and then discuss what's coming up next in the Sprint 87 that's coming up. And then we could close the recording. If anybody has a community discussion they want to start, we can talk about that. So real quick, you can see most of the work has been done in the server itself. We've actually closed a lot of issues in the Kiali repo. So we have had some community contributions in the Helm and Operator this past sprint, but most of the work has been done in the server. So some of the highlights, we now have the ability in our UI wizards to edit annotations for workloads and services. So this is mainly to support the ability to add Istio related annotations, so you can add whatever annotations you want. This is helpful for things like the sidecar annotations. So this is just another way to provide the user with some user interface functionality to do things that people would normally have to do, say, through kubectl. Now you can do it through the UI. Our multi-cluster work continues. This past sprint, we did a lot of internal work. You won't see a lot in the UI user-facing, but we do now support multiple remote cluster secrets and tokens that we can now use to access remote clusters. This is going to be used going forward. It's an internal API, but the UI can actually show these remote secrets that we load in and some details about these remote clusters. Now, this mesh menu item has been there for a while. It's been experimental for a while. We just refactored it to use these new remote cluster secrets that support Kiali to access these remote clusters. Some other notable changes, the Yager queries can now be customized to timeout in a certain amount of time. We had a community member was having problems with their Yager and they needed to customize the timeout. At the time before this, we had a hard-coded timeout. Now they can configure it however long they want. Unfortunately, we had a graph performance regression that we detected. Actually, I think a community member found this. We did fix it, and we did backport it to both this 162 and 163. So this has been fixed in this release, and it has been backported to these past two. In the auth policy principles that support wildcards, our validations now will look for this. So we actually do support wildcards in the auth policy resources. When auto MTLS is enabled, we actually show a message in the masthead now, and our validations take into account when auto MTLS is enabled. And more gateway work. So in past sprints, we've been introducing Kubernetes gateway support, and this is just more work in that area. So we're showing validation icons and showing these objects in the service and details pages. So this is just continuing our Kubernetes gateway work that we have been doing. One interesting note, and this has to do with our multi-cluster work, is our Kiali's cache is now required. You can't turn off the Kiali cache. This was required for our multi-cluster work. Obviously, the cache gives us performance benefits, so this really shouldn't be an issue, but just to make a point of it here, it is now required to be used. You can't turn it off. We did some RBAC documentation changes, so take a look at the configuration page dealing with RBAC. We did some changes there to reflect the latest Kiali features. So this is just a documentation change. We're just updating the documentation to make it more relevant for the latest releases. In the past, you may have noticed that you would get a message in Kiali if you are running a Kiali version that is not compatible with your Istio environment. That has since proved to be painful to maintain, so we actually ripped out this runtime check for our compatibility matrix. So we still do document compatibility in our Kiali.io documentation. We just don't have Kiali checking it at runtime. So users are responsible for ensuring that their version of Kiali is compatible with their Istio environment. They just go to our docs, confirm what they're running will work. Kiali itself, when you bring up the UI, won't tell you now if you're compatible or not. And we've got improved usability in some of our wizards. Again, some more work for the Kubernetes gateway work, along with service entry and gateway wizards as well. Just made the forms a little bit more usable. So those are the quick highlights of this past sprint. So what are we going to do in the upcoming sprint 87? The epics currently in progress, you're going to see, again, multi-cluster is going to be a focus in the near and midterm future. So we've got several epics dealing with multi-cluster issues. We're also going to start looking at ambient. Istio 1.17, which was just released a day or two ago, has released ambient in alpha form. So it is alpha support, but it is there. So we're going to start investigating what Kiali needs to do to support Istio ambient. So we'll be doing that in conjunction with our multi-cluster work. And one final thing to note here is tempo. We're going to look to see if we can add some tempo support. This is tracing related. So I believe it either replaces or you can use it in conjunction with Yager. But there has been some community interest in tempo support, and I think we might have some community folks that are interested in helping implement this tempo support. But we are going to be looking at that in this upcoming sprint. So that is it for our community meeting. I'm going to stop the recording and then we can do any discussions that we want to do offline.